watching.
Subscribe.
Hello, you're watching ScreenStalker, I'm Laurie Blake, and this is the gaming news, where we've discovered the real reason Anthem has failed, and we'll be piercing our way to the very heart of that story like a javelin. Not the robot suits from Anthem, but the long, pointy stick ones. But first, a quick news roundup and a reminder to have yourself your very own super click party by hitting the thumbs up, mashing subscribe, and pounding that bell icon until all that's left is a bloody pulp to enable notifications. And also answer our question of the day. What could Bioware do now to fix Anthem and entice new players to the game? But before we get to the relative failings of Bioware's latest title, let's just quickly whiz through some news stories. Starting with the failings of Fallout 76, which I'm sure, along with Anthem, is causing the wizened marketing seers in publishers to look up from their scattered lamb bones and tarot cards and just say, the sides say, stick with what you know. Mass Effect again. Because as you may well remember, Fallout 76 was a bit of a hot mess at launch, and that was a bit of an understatement. It was a lot of hot mess. It was the Pompeii of hot messes, and now people just come to gawp at the ashes. One of the weirder launch issues centered around inventory management, because like most games with survivalistic undertones, characters could only carry so much stuff, and that was based on cumulative weight, which means that every little item adds up, like hairpins, which may only weigh 0.1 pounds in game, but when you're carrying 100 or 200 lockpicks, that's suddenly a lot of weight, more than the armor your character can wear. I've held bobby pins, not as heavy as armor. But also, why has no one thought of making the armor out of bobby pins if they're so robust? Somebody should cosplay that stat. Now, the bobby pin problem has been patched and patched again, but that hasn't stopped fans from finding creative ways to air their grievances. At the Bethesda Game Days Fallout 76 panel, Todd Howard said, "Some people send letters, some of those are very creative. I got a box of bobby pins the other week that said, weigh these. Whoever sent that was the most creative letter I got. And at least now he's got something to hold all of the other letters of complaint together." Perhaps mercifully though, Fallout 76 may not have to struggle on much longer, as GameStop seems to think the next generation of consoles is coming very, very soon. According to GameSpot CFO, very confusing, Rob Lloyd said, "With respect to new hardware, as we get closer to the end of the current console cycle for Xbox and PlayStation, we expect demand to decline as some customers choose to wait on the sidelines in anticipation of acquiring the next generation of innovative consoles." Now, Lloyd was talking about business elements that GameStop shared with analysts to provide context for 2019, suggesting that the new consoles from both Microsoft and Sony are expected to be announced and potentially even released this year. Now, Microsoft is rumored to be gearing up to announce something at E3 regarding a new console or potentially even consoles, while Sony won't be at E3, but very likely could host their own announcement like that State of Play Nintendo Direct ripoff they did a few weeks back. Even Nintendo is rumored to be working on multiple new models of the Switch, one of which will be handheld only, so won't even switch. That is some blue sky thinking there. What if names don't even matter? What if the Xbox is in a box? What if we don't actually play games on a PlayStation? Actually, Microsoft tried that with the Xbox One at the beginning of this console generation. That's why they lost it before it started. 5-year-old burn. Now on to the real meat and potatoes of today's news, because Jason Schreier of Kotaku.com posted an in-depth and really rather damning report of the working practices at Bioware during the making of Anthem, which may well have led to some of the game's failings and inability to chime with quite the quantity of fans that they wanted. But first, a quick primer on what Anthem actually is. The game is an online action role player where you team up with up to 4 other players to head out into the wilds of an unnamed and untamed planet in powerful exosuits to bombard big monsters with rockets, shrapnel, and frickin' lightning in the hopes of finding increasingly devastating weapons and even more loot. And it sounds like a great sales pitch. You're basically Iron Man or a Gundam pilot. But unfortunately, this Gundam was no fun. Damn. Because at launch, critics pointed out that technical hiccups, overbearing grind, and a really rather lackluster story, which is genuinely shocking coming from Bioware, all contributed to a game that felt really rather repetitive and shallow. So much so, it has a Metacritic score of 55, which is the lowest in Bioware's history. But to be fair, these are a lot of the same criticisms that were said about Bungie's Destiny when that first launched. But patch after patch, that game slowly managed to find its feet and now has a highly devoted, really engaged fan base who've bought the season pass for Destiny 2, even though they don't actually have time to play the thing and all the high-end stuff is still gear-gated and they're nowhere near the step level. It's a grumble for a different time. It's a grumble of mine for a different time. The point with Anthem is that there's still hope left. With the right support from publisher EA and some classic Bioware attention, things can be turned around. Although it's the behind-the-scenes cost of what we perceive to be the Bioware attention to detail that is the major focus of Schreier's report. He spoke to 19 people who were involved or adjacent to the development of the game at Bioware's Edmonton and Austin studios, who all spoke anonymously as they were not authorized to talk about the development process at all. And they did not have good things to say. It was noted that dozens of developers, many of them decade-long veterans of the company, had left Bioware in the last 2 years, while many co-workers were advised by doctors to take stress leave of weeks or even months during development. One former Bioware developer said that, "I cannot count the amount of stress casualties we had on Mass Effect Andromeda or Anthem." A stress casualty at Bioware means someone had such a mental breakdown from stress that they're just gone for 1 to 3 months. Some come back, some don't. And it's somewhat telling that these same development woes also contributed to the equally technically troubled Mass Effect Andromeda, which no doubt left the studio's faces tired from apologizing. And a big part of the problem is crunch, because the best word in serial is definitely the worst word in gaming. Because according to this Kotaku article, Bioware seemed to thrive on crunch and has done for a very long time. Schreier said that people at the studio use a term called Bioware magic, the idea that no matter how rough a game's production is, things come together in the end to kind of create something exceptional. It happened on the original Mass Effect trilogy, it happened on Dragon Age Origins and Inquisition 2. And it sounds like the crunch or the Bioware magic, or however you want to dress it up, was actually an ingrained part of the studio culture and was obviously being positively reinforced by the very fact that their games turned out good and chimed with audiences. So they just carried on doing it until the wheels fell off right around Anthem and Andromeda, and the wheels, in this case, being people and their mental health. And obviously Bioware aren't the only studio impacted by crunch, they're just the kind of most recent casualties. Red Dead Redemption 2 made headlines not long ago after Rockstar's co-founder Dan Houser boasted that they were working 100-hour weeks to get it finished. He later clarified that this was just 4 people on the senior writing team and only over an intense 3-week period. But that wasn't what his staff was saying. Liar, liar, pants are 4 days old because you haven't been home properly. Because once again, Kotaku Ultra Sleuth Jason Schreier spoke to 34 current and 43 former Rockstar employees about crunch and got mixed responses, because many were happy with the work they did and felt that they had crunched less than on other projects at the studio, while some said that the crunch for them lasted months or even years. And all of this kind of added more fuel to the fire for game developers to unionize and hopefully stop these aggressive periods of unpaid overtime in order to ship a title on time, which was one of the major talking points at this year's Game Developers Conference. So hopefully, stories like this will give studio heads a bit of a kick up the rear to clamp down on the amount of crunch they put people through, because again, it's all fun and games until someone gets hurt. Well, no, actually, it's mostly just games and no real fun, and that's kind of the point of this story. And unfortunately, from the sounds of the Kotaku article, people did get hurt, as did the studio's reputation. Because we now live in a world in which Bioware, they of Jade Empire fame, in my house at least, have damaged their reputation as makers of RPGs. And part of that is just through indecision. Because The original concept for Anthem was meant to be about you heading out over the city walls into the wilds with your friends to see how long you could survive in a brutally hostile environment. The developers interviewed said that they were inspired by the likes of Dark Souls, Darkest Dungeon, and even Shadow of the Colossus. And then they iterated and went back and forth on ideas like the flying, taking it out and putting it back in again, taking it out again, taking it from the original tease in 2012 all the way to 2017, where they still didn't know what sort of game it was. Some said that it wasn't until the E3 demo in June 2017 that they even knew what the game was supposed to be about, and then they actually had to go away and make that. One dev said, "It felt like the entire game was basically built in the last 6 to 9 months. You couldn't play it. There was nothing there. It was just this crazy final rush." The hard part is, how do you make a decision when there's no game? There's nothing to play, so yeah, you're just going to keep questioning yourself. And while everyone was running around questioning themselves, management were just kind of expecting the Bioware magic to just whip the whole thing into shape, and it didn't. Instead, they're now lumped with this sinking ship that they've got to patch up, and a workforce that is breaking down and clearly quite frustrated and angry. Bioware did come back on the article from Kotaku though, putting out a blog post before it actually went up, saying, "The health and well-being of our team members is something we take very seriously," before admitting that there's always room to improve. Weirdly though, the statement also has a little bit of a pop at the games press in general for poking around in their business and bringing some of these issues to light. People in this industry put so much passion and energy into making something fun. We don't see the value in tearing down one another or one another's work. We don't believe articles that do that are making our industry and craft better, which may well be missing the point. The article isn't tearing down the work, it's tearing down the way you do it and how damaging that has been to your staff. Because sure, Bioware has proven more than capable of pulling off great things under stress in the past, even, dare I say, magic. But magic doesn't always work. At some point, you're just a man named David with pen on your hand. Hopefully though, something does come good of this Anthem debacle and the whole furore around this story, like one of the devs interviewed said. "I think Anthem might be the kick in the butt that Bioware leadership needed to see that how you develop games has changed dearly. You can't just start fresh and fumble your way forward until you find the fun. That doesn't work anymore." Thank you for watching, and let me know what you thought of this deep dive into the development of Anthem in the comments down below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and enable notifications, and answer that question of the day too. And remember, we're watching.